Well, welcome readers to another episode of Lessons Learned. My name is Vincent Vezza. I'm an author. I'm the founder of Hidden Treasure Novels, the regional representative for the North Carolina Writers Network, Metro North Chapter. I'm here today to introduce you to Chuck Thurston, an author in his own right, an author here at Hidden Treasure Novels, former representative of the Metro North Chapter. And Chuck has some lessons he'd like to share with you, with the viewers on this call today. Chuck, I turn it over to you to share your lessons.
Well, thank you very much for setting this up, Vince. It's a grand opportunity, and I'm happy to be part of it. The first lesson that you have and that I'm reading on the screen is read, and a little anecdotal piece on that. Some years ago, when I was running the Metro North chapter, just on the fun of it, I went around, when we were talking about what had been happening with our projects and how we were doing, and I asked people what they were reading. And I was amazed. There were a lot of people who were desperately seeking to get published, and they didn't read anything, or very, very little. And that puzzled me because I've really always thought that if you don't read, it's going to be very, very difficult to write. King, a notably successful author, says that he spends about as much time every day reading as he does writing. And, and he splits it up about 4 and 4 hours writing, 4 hours reading. So that's advice from someone who really knows. And I guess the follow-up question to that on some people's part would be, well, what do I read? And I guess you would read in the areas that interest you as far as writing goes. If you're interested in poetry, you read poetry. We had a couple of people at that time who wrote the very folksy stuff, not bad, and maybe not to everyone's taste, but certainly a market for it. And I asked them, I said, the kind of writing that you like to do would benefit if you were exposed to, say, Edgar Guest. Who's Edgar Guest, or John Greenleaf Whittier? Who's John Greenleaf Whittier? And so they're limiting themselves, I think, unnecessarily by not studying the people, the mentors, in a way, or paradigms that they'd like to be following. So read, and I guess read those things that you're interested in writing about.
Well, Chuck, I thank you for that. The notion that ideas are formed from many ideas that you've learned along your journey in life, and also from the books that you've read, leads me to a second lesson that you've shared with us on numerous occasions at the Writers Network at our regional workshops, when we once were able to still get together over a cup of coffee prior to these days of Zoom. And that was that your ideas take many forms and thoughts and dreams, and they're scribbled on a sheet of paper. And I thought perhaps you could share a little bit about how those scribbles that you started turned into one of your first short stories.
Oh, yes. People ask me off and on, where do you get your ideas for stories? Oh my gosh, if you have your 4 or 5 senses working for you, the stories there are more stories out there than you could possibly handle. Another little anecdotal thing, my wife and I were in a McDonald's some years ago getting a coffee, and I was bringing it back to the booth where we were, and between me and our booth there was a table of 4 or 5 guys, and they were talking about something, and as I got closer I heard one of them say, everybody in my family is dead or dying, and we don't even have a pastor. And that really struck me, and I walked back to the table, our booth, and spoke to Heidi, and I said, gee, you know what I just heard someone say at that table? Everyone in my family is dead or dying, and we don't even have a pastor. And I thought about that, and I said, depending upon the inflection that you would put on that sentence, you can make almost any story. Everyone in my family is dying, we don't even have a pastor. Everyone in my family is dying, and we don't even have a pastor. You could almost form it as a question. but it was delivered in a flat, monotone way. So it was impossible. It was impossible for me to tell exactly what idea this guy, the speaker, was trying to get across. But it's an example. I found recently in an old bed and breakfast that we stayed at, there was a library associated with very, very old books. Musty, a lot had not been read in a long, long time. I just leafed through one that was the plays of Euripides, and there was a slip of paper in there. It looked like maybe it had been used as a bookmark, but it was torn out of what looked to me to be a script for a film. And I thought, my gosh, I wonder if I could ever identify that. And I've spent a couple of weeks, I guess, trying to come up online, finding out who wrote this. There was a little poem in it, but it didn't show up on any of the poetry sites that I did research on. So I wrote a column about that, and I addressed that to my readers, and I say, readers, somewhere out there, somebody knows the source for this little slip of paper. So I'm going to give it to you. And I reproduced it in my story, and invited anyone who knew anything about this to give me a call or email me or find me on Facebook and let me know, because it was an interesting thing. You know, the source for stories, they come from your experiences. That's the only place they can come from. They don't come out of thin air unless, you know, emotionally or mentally or experience-wise, you have some kind of context to put it in. So just keep your eyes and ears and open, and your taste buds, so you can have a Madeleine experience like Marcel Proust, maybe.
Wow, thanks, Chuck. I never thought of it quite that way, but you're 100% on target here. I know that you've told us many times that many one-liners become a story.
Yeah.
And, you know, you parlayed that into another book, another Senior Scribbles on Earth. I think that was the title, right? Senior Scribbles on Earth.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and you know, just to the readers out there, to the writers, potential writers, aspiring writers, that this is how your stories take form. And,
Indeed, right.
yeah. And Chuck, if you would spend just a little bit of time, I know that, you know, you started with some short stories, but then you evolved into a full-length novel. And I know you're always fond to tell us to, you know, create that reality, create a new reality. Could you tell us a little bit about The Coroner Takes a Ride?
Well, The Coroner Takes a Ride is a kind of a story that I had been fooling around with for a long time, several years, and I'd written scraps of it here and there and just set them aside, and kept on doing my short pieces. But I really, in the back of my mind, really wanted to do a longer and more detailed work. So I started writing the thing. I also, because we have a cabin up in Wilkes County, familiar with the foothills of North Carolina and the towns up there, Elkin and Mount Airy and Sparta, Franklin, Jefferson, you know, West Jefferson, those kinds of places. And the kind of culture there, a lot of the idioms and everything. And I thought, this is where to cite this thing, because it's kind of a geography that I know. So it took off from there. And it's very interesting. While I was writing this novel, I had kind of a subplot, I guess, that I really, really liked. And I was trying hard to make it fit in, but it didn't fit in very well. And then I suddenly had a hot flash and thought, by golly, this is the beginning of another novel. It's standalone. I can embellish this, and I've got another book coming. And my hope is that it would be a kind of a trilogy, and it would center around the characters in this small town. I would keep the chief of police, the retired chief of police, and his buddies and companions and other town hangabouts, and the titles would all be kind of on the same line. Like the first one, The Coroner Takes a Ride. The second one is going to be The Mayor Skips Town, And the third one, I've got up in the air, either the librarian finds a ghost or, and I kind of like this one, the cookie finds a fortune, because there's a character in there who's called she's a redheaded cookie, you know, and I just like the idea of a cookie finding a fortune. So, you know, your mind is always working, or it better be. Someone said, you know, when you stop learning, when you're through learning, you're through. And I truly, truly believe that.
Well, that is so true, Chuck. And, you know, you've got a body of published works under your belt and more to come. I know you're also, you know, an accomplished writer prior to even these works, that you had done work for IBM, and you have contributed to the Trail Tales column on a number of occasions. Several stories, if people go to hiddentreasurenovels.com and go to the blog, they'll search for your name. They'll find several short stories that you've prepared for the Trail Tales column, and I really do appreciate that. Chuck, as you know, your books are on the Hidden Treasure Novels site in our bookstore.
Yes.
I'm so proud to carry those books and to point people to those. So congratulations, Chuck. Are there any last words of wisdom you have for the readers out here before we wrap this up?
Well, yeah, I'd like to plagiarize Jim Nettles just a little bit, because the last time he talked, and I scribbled them down because they struck me. And this really isn't rocket science, but Jim was right on the money. And his first one, he said, anybody can publish anything, but how good a product do you want to put out there? And I thought, holy smokes, that makes so much sense. It's probably silly. And I'm not faulting people for trying to, you know, spread themselves out as far as possible on social media. But the thing is, you got to have a good product on social media. I've often said, you know, and I quote Zinsser on this, he said, you know, if you have something that people relate to, that they identify with, that they really, really love to read, they will find you. And so you'd better make sure when they find you that you've got something that's worth being found. And I hate it when people's, you know, metric of their writing skill becomes, I've got 1,000 Facebook followers. You know, that's no damn metric for writing. And the other thing that Jim said, what did he say? Boy, I thought that I had written it down, but he said all money should flow to the author. And I kind of like that idea. But that, you know, that was the wisdom I guess I took from there. Is, you know, spend the time. If you really look at social media, what you're doing is you're writing about your writing. I'd rather concentrate on my writing. And that's just maybe an old, you know, what I say, old fogey attitude towards social media, but it's mine, you know.
Well, Chuck, I appreciate those words, and I believe in those as well. You know, social media is taking over our lives. There's many young people are going to be watching this video, and I would encourage them to follow your words of wisdom. Start reading. If you haven't already, start reading, and read a lot. And when you write, make sure that you write something that other people are going to want to read, that they're going to enjoy reading, and that they will learn from your writing something that will help them along the path of life. I am so pleased that you were able to join us today, Chuck, and that I hope the viewers out here will take the time to leave some comments, go to our channel, to the Lessons Learned channel, for those folks that are going to be viewing this on the North Carolina Writers Network chapter page, the Metro North page. Leave some comments there. Feel free to join us and tell other writers about our group. We'd love to have you become part of our quote unquote tribe. I thank you again. Have a great day and a great week. Look forward to seeing you next time on Lessons Learned. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Just one final, Vince?
Yes, sir.
All right. Just a little self-promotion. This will be my social media, I guess. But anyway, I have a third Senior Scribbles out. It's the Senior Scribbles Bathroom Reader. subtitled "Your Results May Vary," and it's KDP has it right now, and I'm polishing that thing. So hopefully, in a month or two, that'll be the third Scribbles, and I appreciate the opportunity to put that out on this recording. Thank you, Vince.
Well, thank you, Chuck. Well, and I'd like to also make sure that we have that in the Hidden Treasure Novels bookstore. Thanks
I
so
hope
much.
so. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Have a great week.